Recording in progress.
Same thing as being solid.
No, we're gonna go ahead and be in our meeting. Yeah, I got a email the other day about coordinating meeting, on the floor and then. Appreciate everyone.
Here. Oh, you're gonna sit here, folks.
Let me go ahead
Collins,
and take roll for the in the record. Lance Bitcock, President. Jeff Marcuse,
Present.
Butch Rice, President. Kat Hamilton.
Here.
Chris Carson.
Present.
And then I believe Kevin is the only one who is absent. Thank you all. You all had an opportunity to review the minutes that Renee sent. Welcome, a motion and a second for approval.
So moved. Second.
First, Van, then second, Jeff. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Right. We have, I believe one action item and then, 4 agenda items, that are just information in nature. Stephanie, you wanna, kick off the ASU Newport Park Tree?
Yes. So in statute, this board approves new secondary area technical centers and their satellites. As I have previously let you know, we have a stagnant budget of $23.2 million, which that's public school funds. So we want to carefully look at the need for adding more when we know that the Department of Commerce is going to have to supplement the public school funds when we add. However, in this case, Arkansas State University Newport has a Marked Tree campus. So they're not asking for any infrastructure funding. And the students that will be served on their Marked Tree campus are currently underserved because they're having to drive all the way to Blytheville, or to Newport, which is it takes up too much of their school day. So it is my recommendation that because we're not having to add infrastructure funding, and because we have East Poinsett, Marked Tree, and Lepanto students who will be served on an actual ASU campus. So they're not gonna stay in their schools and just get concurrent credit. They're gonna go to a real college campus, and I feel really strongly about that. It will add to the budget, but if you look at the programming that they're requesting, it's for advanced manufacturing, construction, supply chain, health, and human services. So these are all high wage, high need industries, particularly in that area where they serve the steel industry and manufacturing, and with all the construction going on in that area, as well as supply chain and healthcare. It's our recommendation that we approve this satellite of ASU. It's 167 pages of, which is why your packet is so large. But they did actually, they had everything that we asked for in the packet. And I'll just say that I'm going to blame this on Ross's team, ACTE, or CTE, that has come up with these forms. But it does cover everything. And again, it's OSD's recommendation that we approve.
Just kind of a big picture. When we were talking about this, when we have a stagnant funding pool, but when we add other eligible funding centers, kind of flesh out the implications of that longer term.
So OSD, we administer the public school funds that fund these centers. So in other words, this is actually Ross's money, but But we, because we are in the workforce space and we're working with employers every day, we make the decisions on what to fund. So you all don't have to get involved in the programming, but we do have 4 program requests as well, new programs. That doesn't have to, in statute, you guys don't have to vote on that, but right now we are approving tier 1 programming. And if you have an employer, we will approve some tier 2 programming. But when there's not enough funding based on our tiers, remember it's tier 1 is 8,000 per FTE and tier 2 is 5,500 per FTE. When there's a shortfall, for the past few years, OSD has used our commerce money to make up that difference. So when we are asking you to add this program, we are taking the risk that we will have to use commerce dollars for these. And Cody mentioned a couple of meetings back, we will have additional funding that we want to put towards the centers that'll come through the UI assessment. We think that will add another $8 to $10 million a year in revenue, and we're going to use some of that money to pull over to subsidize the CTE programming at our centers. But Ross is one of the reasons Ross is going to kind of talk to you about that. Because of Learns and Access, we're going to keep seeing increased funding in CTE programming, particularly at our centers, because superintendents are going to want to add more CTE to get those diplomas of distinction and diplomas of merit. So they're going to find the most inexpensive ways to get those diplomas. And so one of the ways they can do that, especially if you're a small school, is to send your students. So we want to make sure that the training there is meaningful, but we also have to be cognizant of the fact that it is going to drive up enrollment. So there's going to have to be a breaking point where Department of Education is probably going to have to come up with more funding, as well as the funding that we're going to supplement it with.
You feel like we can responsibly fund a new one without too much of a detriment to the others?
Well, see, this will be for next year. So this will be when we have the new UI assessment money, which the reason we went and got that extra funding was for this very reason, because we don't want to deny programs just based on money. And that's when Cody and I had this discussion. His main thing was to me, is it a good application? Is it going to serve more kids? Are there employers? Are these high need areas? Let's look at that first, and let's don't deny it just because of money. So that's kind of how we came to this.
How much is estimated? How like money wise?
It could potentially add another couple of $100,000. These are small school districts, but again, these superintendents are really incented to get more CTE training, to get a better grade, to get more funding. So, of course, we all follow the money. So I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that we're going to have increased funding. In the next meeting, I'll do kind of a report on our secondary center funding. It looks to be about the same that we're going to have to put in. We've been putting in anywhere from $1 million to $1.2 million for the last several years. Ross.
And I think something else, and this is going to be a part of my presentation, I'll do here in a little bit, but to this board, I think something that's going to be real intentional over the next, I think, year or less than a year is also how we fund the programs that we fund. The method that exists right now works, but it works for the reality of what we have budgeted now. And if we continue to see increases, which we know we will, which is good, because that's what I think everybody is driving for, meeting the needs of Arkansas workforce. But at the same time, like that dollar amount from our department side is probably not going to change a whole lot. So then how do we adjust the funding mechanism that exists within that? And also, as we look at school funding, I know that this fiscal session that there's a lot of conversation around some of the funding that the schools receive and some changes that might exist there. What that could look like, because that could also adjust some things down the road as well. But I think we also have to look at how this board determines how much we fund each program and actually talks about the tiers. I think that's a really intentional piece to look at. I know we've dealt with things here about if they're getting concurrent, they're not getting concurrent. Those things have all been helpful, but they're just like band-aids on like the kind of gushing piece. So I think that's something that we've got to be real intentional with as the board is thinking about how we fund programs and how we determine what that looks like. And there's a lot of different ways in which I think that can be done, because I think we can also look at success metrics from some of the programs. I think the ones that are performing higher, getting more placement, more credentialing might be really worth it as well, because we have some that have some crazy numbers enrollment, but then I think when we look at actually what's leaving there and actually meeting the needs of our communities, might not actually be that great. And so, but they're getting funded at the same rate as their neighbor down the road. And so I think even looking at, kind of our return on our investment with them, and what that piece looks like. So just, I think some food for thought as we go forward, rather than just saying we need more money, it's also like, are we being good with, I'm not saying we're not being good stewards with it, but are we using it to the best of our ability with what we currently have? Something just to think about as we go forward. And I'll talk about the enrollment numbers so you can see the reality of this year heavily, what it's looking like across the board, whether they're at a center, whether they're on a K-12 campus, kind of the trend we're seeing, the uptick, and how our superintendents are chasing the dollar and the letter grade, and the good and bad of that. But we'll discuss it a little bit.
And Ross makes a good point about the concurrent credit. You will recall that because we still have some centers who are located on high school campuses, that we reduced their funding if they didn't have concurrent credit. This ASU Newport satellite is an easy yes, because they're going to have concurrent credit. But not to get too deep in the woods, but they found a way, the high schools found a way. So what they did is they said, to get the full funding, they said, we're offering concurrent credit. And so when we dug into it, what we found out was that, yes, they were offering these courses at their high school campus for concurrent credit, but less than half of the students were actually taking it for concurrent credit. So in the next meeting, you're going to receive some updated rules, and we're going to fix that problem, because it's either a college class or it's not. So you're either going to get the full funding because you're going to get 3 to 6 hours, whatever it is, or you're not. So that's how the high schools got around it. They went to their partner community colleges and said, hey, if we use this syllabus and our teacher qualifies, would you offer the current credit? And of course, the colleges will, but they have to pay for it. So what we're finding out, the colleges got, it was less than half in many cases. So we're going to fix that problem in the spring. But all of this is great conversation. But again, our recommendation is yes on this. And my heart is always, I'm a Northeast Arkansas girl, and my heart is always for these students in these areas don't have the opportunities that a student in Central Arkansas often has. And so they need the CTE training more than anyone. And most likely they're going to stay in Northeast Arkansas. They're going to work in the steel mills. They're going to work in the medical facilities in that area. So to me, this makes sense to say yes.
Yeah, any other questions or discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so in the absence of this being approved, these kids, what happens to these kids? They wouldn't get these skills training.
Right.
Right?
They're not going to ANC, Arkansas Northeastern College. It's too far.
Yeah, so
To be built.
we see the same pattern play out that we've seen the past unlimited decades. And to Ross's point, I think that maybe it is a good time to, we've been, 6 years under the tiered funding structure. Maybe it is a good time to looking at some performance metrics of the kids that are actually going, are they getting some kind of certificates?
It'll be easier now that if we're going to get the longitudinal data where we can actually track these students, because what these colleges are going to say, we don't know what happened to them. We don't know if they got employed. And so I think with launch and the longitudinal that system that we're going to have, it's going to be easier for us to track those students after graduation.
There aren't any other questions or discussion. I have a motion to approve. So moved. Jeff, have a second.
Second.
Coach. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? Good. Thank you for the work with them. Good part of the state that is seeing growth and, good to capitalize. So. All right, our next agenda item. Carmen, there we go. Carmen, would you just like to go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone, make sure
Absolutely.
everyone.
So good morning, everyone. I am Carmen Jackson. I'm the grants project manager here for the Office of Skills Development. And I'll give you guys just a little background. I've been with OSD for 8 years now. I started off as coding executive assistant. At that time, I oversaw just the grant on a very small scale. So that meant just inputting on spreadsheets and handling email correspondence. But over time, I transitioned into this role. I got a chance to build those key industry partnerships. And I was able to learn and understand the training opportunities and availability, as well as help to streamline some of our grant platforms. And so I get the pleasure today to talk to you about something that's near and dear to my heart. Everybody knows me knows I love workforce development grants. I don't even have a job. I love what I do here. I get to help people gain skills. I also get a chance to support employers and overall strengthen community. So today I will talk to you all about the overview of the workforce development grants. I will talk to you about where we are currently within the fiscal year, and then I'll give you some of the data and some of the things that are coming up in 2026. Okay, so workforce development grants. So our mission or our objective here is to strengthen our workforce and support economic development. And so we do this through one, developing professional skills. And this is where we help employees to learn new skills and also to improve the skills that they currently have. We want to reduce skills gaps, and this is by addressing what the employee has versus what the employer needs. And lastly, by providing technical training. And this is training that's specialized for the company's needs. So our grants are broken down into 3 main categories. We have customized technical, professional development, and grow our own grant. So customized technical training, or what we call CT grants. So like I said before, these are unique trainings for companies' needs. We reimburse these as 75% of the requested total. And within that total, we reimburse other expenses outside of training. So administrative costs up to 10%, equipment costs, facilities costs, instructional materials, and also travel. And so we also, so the maximum award for this particular grant opportunity is $250,000, and this is per fiscal year. Our fiscal year runs from July 1 to June 30th. Examples of this type of training would be industrial electricity, PLC, motor controls, and robotics. And so about 50% of the grants that we receive are CT grants. So next we'll talk about grow our own. And these are businesses that are headquartered here in Arkansas with no more than 250 employees. They're also reimbursed at 75%. And the max for this one is $1 million. However, it's broken down into $250 per quarter. And so I want to highlight this one. I'm very proud of our grow our own grants. As time has progressed, when we first started, we had a handful of these grants, but now about 22 to 23% of the grants we receive are grow our own grants. And so that has increased tremendously since the beginning. And so I want to highlight some of our companies. So here we have Highland Pellets, Seal Solar, SPF America, Julian & Sons, just to name a few. And so lastly is our professional development or PD grants. And so these are your soft skills or core academic skills training. They're reimbursed at 50% and they're max $50,000. This one makes up about 20% of the grants that we receive. The type of trainings here, examples would be Excel, SHRM, effective communication, and also the marketing. And so now I want to provide you all with a recap of what we have been doing from July 1 all the way up until today. So we have impacted over 150 companies over numerous industries. We've received 351 applications, and we have impacted over 5,000. The exact number is 5,032 trainees so far. So I'm excited about that. As far as our candidate utilization, out of 75, we're at 34, and that does seem to be low. So I've been working with my colleagues just to compile a list of all the chambers, and so that we can reach out and we can begin working with them just to figure out how can we utilize more of our counties. We may not be able to reach all of them, but we want to reach as many as possible. And so I said small about the industry, small amount about that. So here we have 40 industries listed. And so it ranges all the way from aerospace and defense, energy, healthcare, retail, even utilities. We received the most grants from construction, packaging, manufacturing, and steel manufacturing industries. And so we want to continue our year-to-date recap, and this is just getting to the numbers of what we funded, approved, and things of that nature. So we have received $7.6 million to be exact in grant funding requests. Approval amounts are at $2.5 million, and then we reimbursed over $177,000, which is pretty good for us because usually at the end of the fiscal year, we have a lot of committed and outstanding grants simply because we're letting employers submit multiple reimbursement reports, whereas we have cut that down to just one. So that says to employers, I need to go ahead and do my trainings, get my reimbursement documentation in, and get it submitted so that I can get paid. And so it benefits the employer because they get reimbursed, and it benefits us because we don't have so many grants committed or outstanding at the end of the year. And so I just want to provide our annual breakdown. So as you all see, we have been on an upward slope since we started. We did have a dip in 21-22, however, that was due to the pandemic because there was minimal to no training going on at that point. But as of 22-23, we doubled those efforts and approved over $5 million. And so we are currently at $2.6 million in approved funding. So I'm projecting that we should hit over $7.2 million this year. So hopefully we can keep up the upward trend. And so now we've talked about the program itself, what we've been doing, but most importantly is what we're going to be doing going forward. And so the key thing here on this slide is partnership. We want to make sure that we continue to strengthen and sustain those partnerships with our industry partners. And for me, that is chambers, that's companies, training providers, anyone that I'm working firsthand with. We want to make sure because they need to feel comfortable with us to ask questions, tell us about their barriers to trainings, and also any other issues they may be having. Also, in-person site visits are very important. I went out to a company, and I'll show you guys in another slide, but I went out and I was able to understand the training firsthand. And so when I do that, I can advocate for companies not understand the trainings when I get in front of the committee to say this is something that is vital to this company, their needs. And then also it makes sure we can see how the funding is being spent, as well as we can make sure that they are in compliance with the OSD rules. Next, we want to talk about data accuracy and tracking. So our data has been accurate, but we have been doing it manually. As I talked about in the beginning, when I first started, we were using Excel spreadsheets, so everything was manually input. And so at that time, we had to have multiple people check behind each other just to make sure everything was accurate. However, Salesforce does this for us, so we pull reports in seconds now. Love that. And as far as tracking, now we can see what trends are going on. So we can see what trainings our employers are they utilizing most, and also what they're going to need in the future. And lastly, website functionality and user experience. So I've been working with our communications team. I've been taking things off of our website. I've been adding things. And so I'm working on a how-to video, and it's going to have from beginning to end the entire process. So that when an applicant comes on the site, they don't have time to go through and click different tabs and, call and ask all these questions. We want it to be simple for them. And so we understand how important time is to the employer. I talk about this all the time. And so we want to make sure that our website is effective and that they're able to find what they need in a timely manner, because now our application, I tell people it should not take more than 30 minutes. And if it takes more than 30 minutes, that means I'm not doing my job. So we're working on that to update everything on that. So these are just some pictures. I'm super excited about this part. So, when Secretary McDonald, he sent out the message about that we need to go out and do more in-person visits. So I took that and I ran with it. I asked Stephanie, I said, is it okay for us to go out? And she said, that's fine. Well, manufacturing month was the perfect time. So, our training provider, Business and Industry, what we call BIT, they had customer appreciation. So I took that opportunity to go out to meet them, also do a face-to-face. And when I was there, I got a chance to go to a company and meet with Ozark Electric. And I was so glad I was able to go out because if she was able to tell me about some of the issues they were having, because she's like a one-person show and she's handling many roles. And so being able to talk to me firsthand, and I can kind of course, every company is unique, their situation. And so we don't want to turn people away just because they have unique needs. And so we were able to walk through their process together and figure out how we can best suit them. We also went to DC Cups that time period. I was able to do a presentation on our grants. And then Stephanie and I went out to LOPAC, and this was recently. So I want to make sure with all of our efforts, I take pictures because we use this on our websites now. And I'm so proud of our social media sites. So at one point we had no social media engagement, I'm sad to say. But Stephanie let me take it over, and I believe that was October. And so I've been coming up with initiatives each month. We had the manufacturing month. We took one company per day. We talked about what they do, and then also we showed appreciation to them. In the month of November, we had 27 days of gratitude. So we picked other industries, we recognized them. And then we have one this month that's focused around Christmas. And so we are highlighting other companies. So now we're up to 400 plus on our user engagement per day. And so I'm excited about all of that. So I say all that to say everything that we're doing, it goes back to our initial mission to making sure that we are strengthening our workforce and make sure we're supporting economic development. And so I put my contact information here. As board members, if you guys have anyone that you would like to connect me with, I'm willing to go out in person. I love to talk to people. So I'm willing to go out in person if we have to do it over Zoom, however we can get to them to make sure that they're able to utilize our grant opportunities. I'm willing to do so. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Carmen, thank you. This is very informative. Going back to grow our own companies, I'm curious, can you kind of just give us a little bit more detail? I'm particularly interested in Julian and Son. So what does that look like? Kind of start me on the front end of it. What are we doing and where does it end up and how much are they getting and all said and done? And if I put you on the spot on that particular one, we can be more broad than that.
So when you say from beginning to end, are you talking about the initial partnership to the reimbursement
Correct,
portion?
correct.
So they've been a partner with us for quite a while. I believe that Stephanie, at one point, Stephanie was setting all of this stuff. So I believe she set up that initial partnership with them. And so Stephanie, are you able to speak about the details of Julian and Sons? Because that's not one I've heard you say.
Yeah, so Julian and Sons, they're a family company, and their patriarch passed away. And so they really needed on-the-job training immediately. They're a very small, they make custom, really super fancy cabinetry, gun cabinets for like princes and sheiks around the world. And they have around 30 employees, and they're all from the Heber Springs area where they're located. And so when they initially contacted us, they were, when your patriarch passes away, your leader, the person who really was down in the shop every day, they needed on-the-job training immediately. And so we worked with them for a little over 2 years just to get, because the young son who was taking over was a young son. And so they worked with AMS as well. So they came to us, and they're probably one of our larger in terms of reimbursement, because they kept the training going so long during the pandemic, because they weren't doing as much, but they wanted to keep their people inside the facility. They did tons of training during their downtime and kept the business very. If you haven't looked at them, go to Julian and Sons online and just look at their work. It's beautiful.
So we were paying 100% of that training, 75%?
75%. And a grower-owned company can access up to $1 million per year. None of them ever had. It's hard to have that much training, especially as small as they were.
Right.
But theirs was significant. Theirs was significant.
Thank you both.
Are there any other questions?
Is there any way we can get that information?
Absolutely.
Or that-
I sure will.
Okay, thank you.
It's in the packet that we sent out to you. I think maybe you did not get that one though because it was too large, but I think it.
But just, you can go ahead and send that out, Carmen, because
Yes.
we won't have all this other stuff in it. And what I would say, if any of you have associations that you're a part of, if any of you are involved in the Kiwanis Club and you, or anywhere there's employers gathered, I feel like I've talked until my throat hurts about these grants, but every day I meet somebody who didn't know about them. So Carmen, as you can see, so proud of Carmen and all the work she's done, and she would be great to come and speak to any of those.
Is there a, forgive me, man. Is there a set pool of money or is our budget based upon need? And we do or do not spend all of that money?
It depends on the company, and it also depends on how many locations. Because, for example, with, I will use CT. So with the $250,000 max, a lot of them don't meet their max. But there are some who make it right down to the last dollar. So it just kind of depends on their need and how much training. Like, for example, like Newport Steel, Big Roof Steel, they utilize probably all of their training budget.
Okay.
But in terms of our
Yeah,
budget,
yeah,
in
let
terms
me
of our
rephrase.
budget, yeah, I have budgeted around $8 million for the OSD grants, a little over $2 million for our large scale MOUs that we do with big groups, $1.6 million for our apprenticeship. So there's $8 million budgeted, but we still have the OSD fund balance, which I can dip into. So high priority for Office of Skills Development is meeting employer needs. So we would not deny any employer based on money.
We spend that $8 million annually?
We
Okay.
don't, that's
All
my
right.
budget.
So there's, it's not tapped out, I guess is what I'm guessing at. There's plenty of room. Okay. All right.
Not yet anyway. I'm
Yeah.
hoping that we can get to a place where we actually tap it out. Thank you all so much for your time and your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Appreciate your work there. Well, it sounds like we all need to, our heads together around how to push this and promote this, because I don't know, feedback that we hear. I don't know company, that would not be more interested in taking more advantage of the workforce training companies, particularly at that payout rate. So, maybe we can take that up at another meeting, but what are the untapped opportunities we have there? But thank you, Carmen. Hey, Justin.
Danny.
Yeah, we're good to see you again. I would like to say, well, that Justin joined this agency under some wonderful leadership that we had in the past. So,
It's getting better all the time.
oh,
Well, you walked right into that one, didn't you?
Okay. All right. You want to formally introduce yourself?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Justin Majors. I'm the Director of Arkansas Industry Connect. And I'll go over a quick presentation here to tell you what Industry Connect is, where we originated, what our goal is going forward, and our mission working within the Department of Commerce. So AIC, we're a strategic workforce development agency built to serve industry. Our job essentially is to connect employers with all the various resources that we have available in the state. One thing that we hear consistently, and I've heard for many years from employers, is that, yeah, I like to take advantage of this or training, but I don't know, there's so many different things. There's Office of Skills Development, there's my local training providers, there's maybe local, who do I talk to? Who's my one point person? We are that one point of contact for industry in the state of Arkansas going forward. Up until 6 months ago, my team was known as Existing Business Resources Division. We were part of AEDC. In July, we transitioned over to Workforce Connections to take the lead on this program. So our goal, again, with Commerce, is to be point the spear in dealing with existing industry and emerging industry coming in. We work hand in hand. with ADC. Just yesterday, I was going to site visits with a company looking to possibly build here in the state. Received messages today from a couple of companies that have already committed to building the state about taking advantage of our workforce training programs going forward. How we organize those, who do we need to bring to the table to make sure that happens, helping them basically run all those traps necessary. Because as we know, there are a lot of options out there. There's never been one person they can contact to put them in touch with whoever they need, whenever. So I'm director of Arkansas Industry Connect. My compatriot back in the back, you'll hear from in a moment, Keith Gamble handles our Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions team, which is part of the National Institutes of Standards and Technology. I'll let him get into what that means, how it operates. So our group team has two distinct groups. The first is our regional managers. Our regional managers are the individuals that go out on a daily basis and sit down and have conversations with manufacturers primarily. We're extending that into healthcare, construction, other trades with our new role. But we're trying to get a feel for what their needs are, what emerging industry needs. Is there anything specific? Where are their heartburn issues? What are the opportunities that we have as a state to help them meet their needs from a workforce perspective? Keith's team of manufacturing solutions delivers organizational and operational excellence programs to these companies, in addition to other services that we may help them realize that our community colleges, local high schools, wherever the case may be. So a little background on how many companies we touched base with. In 2024, we completed 367 what we call discovery calls. That's not just to pop in and say, hey, how you doing? Great. You know, we're here if you ever need us. This is a sit down conversation with either the plant manager, CEO, the operations manager, ownership, whoever the case may be. And we get down the weeds. Hey, how's production going? Where are your roadblocks? Is it individuals? Is it training? Is it finding people? Is it trade issues? Is it whatever the case may be? Because we hear things that sometimes need to go back to AEDC for their assistance. Sometimes we hear things that have to do more with our community college partners. Whatever it is, we are aggregators and disseminators of information. We bring it all in and we be sure it goes to where it needs. Then we serve as project managers to be sure that we follow through with where that may be. Outreach visits, those are more visits to our open chambers, mayors, could be civic groups, whatever the case would be. Anybody that we can maybe get a group of manufacturers in a room and meet with them. From those visits, it's where we usually end up with our discovery calls. Depending on our individuals, with the individual that covers South Arkansas for us, named Rory Goulett. He's been in this role for about 16 years now. He knows everybody in South Arkansas. He knows our legislators. He knows our plant managers. He knows our SHRM directors. He knows how to coordinate these services with the companies and really find out what their needs are and what their trends are. Obviously in South Arkansas, it's timber, paper, pulp, it's a big industry. Very in tune with that industry. And not just that, but with anything. Hard manufacturing is really getting involved with lithium as it's emerging and getting those inroads. As a result of these efforts and some numbers that are reported to us through NIST and through MEP through some work that Keith's team does, created and retained 1,900 jobs last year, 2,100 year before. Companies report to, I say report to us, they actually report to the federal government, $203 million in new and retained sales because it's work. New investments of $6 million last year, $49 million the previous year, 23, and cost savings between $11 and $16 million. So actual tangible impacts that they can feel, it helps them build and grow. I mentioned our team. Right now we have 3 individuals covering the state of Arkansas. Rory, who I mentioned, Scott Edmondson does Central Arkansas, and Todd Hunter does Northeast. We have a position open in Northwest Arkansas we'll be looking to fill after the beginning of the year. And we're considering another position to kind of cover the River Valley area because they're not manufacturing just alone with Fort Smith, between Russellville, Fort Smith, Van Buren, big manufacturing area. General breakdown of what that map looks like right now and who covers where. So Since 2020, we've done 1,500 in-depth conversations. Most of these are all going to be primarily with manufacturers industry because that was our charge prior to moving to Workforce Connections. Workforce is consistently their greatest concern that we hear. Has been prior to the pandemic, after the pandemic, it's always workforce. So why do we have a workforce problem? Well, it's not just specific Arkansas, it's everyone else. When we talk to these manufacturers, a lot of times we'll hear them say, well, nobody wants to work anymore. Well, that's not the case. And sometimes it's because they don't want to work for you. That's a tough conversation to have with an employer. It does us no good to provide well-trained individuals if they're going to be there 3 weeks and leave because they have poor supervisors or they have poor facilities or no career path. So as we look at workforce, a lot of times we look at workforce as from a training perspective, but really a workforce is an ecosystem that involves the worker, that also involves the employer. If you're not a good place to work for whatever reason, you have poor frontline supervisors and managers, it doesn't matter how well the individual we send you is trained, they're going to find somewhere else to go. In their current environment, they have options. Lots of people are hiring right now. If they don't like one job, particularly this emerging generation workforce, they will go somewhere else. So we've been hearing for 120 years that nobody wants to work anymore. Everybody says, oh, it's this new generation doesn't want to work. These press clippings, these are from anywhere from 2015 to 1903. People are complaining about all the mines are shut down because of strikes. What do I do for cold? Warm my house. What's the cause of unemployment and hard times? Manufacturers didn't say it's because nobody wants to work anymore unless they can be paid enough wages to work half the time and loaf half the time. This was in 1943. So in the middle of the war, people are complaining that nobody wants to work. So what we help employers with, in addition to meeting their training needs, we do a lot of work with OSD. A lot of companies we talk to need income worker training. OSD is a great partner in this. But when we talk about turnover in positions, turnover primarily happens in your entry-level positions. It's all up and down the board. 70% of the turnover in a company will happen in the entry-level positions. So why do we have such high turnover in some facilities? See this number 50 to 200% turnover. Imagine if you're trying to run a manufacturing facility, you have 200% turnover in your entry-level positions. You're constantly having to hire individuals. Your production goes down, your quality goes down. So we do, through Keith's team, what we call a workplace resilience assessment. We will go in with their staff, their trainers, their managers, the CEO, whoever wants to attend, and we will do a unbiased review of their facilities. Sometimes it's because the facility is really an unpleasant place to work, not because the jobs, they're just dirty jobs out there. That's the reality. But that doesn't mean your break rooms have to be filthy, or your bathrooms, or we've been to facilities, there are holes in the ceiling big enough you can fly a helicopter. Nobody wants to work in that kind of facility. And sometimes just having another person come and say, hey, have you thought about fixing the hole or cleaning the bathrooms? Little things like that make a big difference when you're trying to bring in an employee. Frontline managers tend to be one of the biggest points of turnover for a company. If you have frontline managers who usually a frontline manager is put in that position because they were very good at doing the job that they're going to be overseeing. They're excellent at doing that, whatever production process. You know what, we're going to make you a manager or supervisor. Well, they may have no background. They have no people skills necessarily. Some are great at it, some need a little training. Career path is another issue. We can send you a well-trained individual, but if they don't see what their future is at their company, they're going to go somewhere else that they do have a future. And then pay is usually not the issue. People will stay at a place they like and earn 50 cents, $1 less an hour if they like it. They see there's a future. Throwing money at the problem is usually not the solution. So our AMS Workplace Resilience Program work on organizational culture, what's a true legitimate compensation, career path, onboarding, talk companies, how do you onboard? We got great onboarding. Well, they come in, they spend the first half of the day with HR, then that afternoon they're online. That's not an onboarding. That's getting somebody to work quick. So this is not just our observation. We partnered a couple of years ago with a company called SME, which is Society of Manufacturing Engineers. Their Tooling U division, and we did an assessment across the state. We talked to over 80 companies, sat down with them in one session, then we met with their employees a day or two later. What were you looking for? What's the problem? Why are you happy here? What would make you stay? And what we found is that while technical skills are important, for a lot of companies, soft skills were even more important, because they told us, hey, we can train the person to do what we want them to do, but they have to be receptive, they have to be willing to learn. We have to show them what our culture is here. So we spend a lot of time directing companies, and we talked about OSD grants with customized training, technical training, and then also the
Girl.
grow own training.
Chill.
Individuals and groups how to lead, how to set a vision for your employees, so that if I get the correct people in place, they will stay.
Just.
Yes.
Just go back to the other one. Can you give us any anecdotal examples of just some turnarounds or significant improvements that you?
I can. There is one company out of Port that we've been engaged with for a couple of years now. We've been trying to be engaged a little bit longer than that. They were a little hesitant for whatever reason. When I said we had companies that had 200% turnover in positions, is that company. They literally, they bring people in the morning and they'd be gone by the afternoon. They go on their lunch break and not come back. I had the manager tell me, he's going to have the bathrooms removed from his facility. What's that going to do? It's like, well, they go to the bathroom and they never come back. It wasn't a strenuous, it was just, it was chaos, uncontrolled chaos. So you walk in the door and you're just like, wow, this is not working for a lot of reasons. Keith Steen's worked with them on some leadership, some organizational management, a lot of frontline supervisor training that we discussed, and those numbers have dropped tremendously. They're now more about the 50% range before they're at 200. That's certainly at the high end, but if you're in that 75% range, 50% range, you're spending more money on onboarding people. You're losing money bringing people in. So again, it's like, well, we need them to do this. I can send you a skilled person, but they're going to leave too. So let's work on best way for a company to build and retain the workforce. It's incumbent worker training and being sure that you are an employer of choice. Employer of choice doesn't necessarily mean you pay the most money. It means you have the best career path, perks, certain, understand what your workers want. And a lot of companies don't. Well, they want to eat, don't they? I'll pay them. That's not good. 50 years ago, that might have been an answer, but now it's the emerging workforce wants a little bit more. They want to know not only what I'm doing, why am I doing it, why is it important. Partners, obviously the employers are our number one partner. Our customer, from our standpoint, is the employer. Where a lot of it's the employer. When a lot of workforce are talking about the customer being the student, ours is looking at the employer side. So obviously the new businesses, emerging businesses, for those existing business, work with our economic development partners, not here at AEDC, but on a local level. Education providers are obviously critically important. And then just the general workforce system. OSD is a big partner in what we do. Talk to companies, identify what the needs are. Don't touch Stephanie and her team. They did a fantastic job helping set the stage. If you're known as a company that promotes from within, you tend to retain. Retention's a big issue. A little railroad map of Italy for you, kind of showing how this all breaks down. But the point of this being that we want to serve as the focal point for everything works. We do not provide all the solutions internally. It's our job to connect you with that. You'll see the arrows on these, they go both ways. That's because the information doesn't just come into us, it goes out. More importantly, probably it goes out. We work with our regional coordinators across the state for outreach, local boards, veteran services. We're currently working with the Governor's Office on the recidivism program to do some training for low-level offenders to keep them from going back in, breaking that cycle. So everything that we do, again, it's from the business perspective side, but it has to, they need people. So that's how we connect. If they have one question, if they want to answer anything, I may not have all the answers, but I find the answers. My team finds the answers. That's what we serve as their single point of contact. So why it matters, obviously, growth, economic growth for the state, and quality of life for our citizens. That's what we do. That's why we do it. Questions, comments before I turn things over to Keith and let him break down what they do with our manufacturing solutions team?
Question, comments?
Hey.
Yeah, thank you. That's fair.
Stephanie told me I had 2 hours for this, but I'm gonna try to do it in less. Good morning, all. My name is Keith Gamble. I serve as the Director for Manufacturing Solutions. We are part of a federal program called the MEP Manufacturing Extension Partnership. So Secretary McDonald, we're here from the government to help.
So am I.
We are modeled after what I think will be relatable to many here in the room, the Cooperative Extension Program, the Cooperative Extension Service. So you got county agents. We are like the manufacturing county agents. In fact, our program was modeled after that program back in 1988. We were started in 1995, and we've been going strong since then. This is the Funky Bunch, the AMS Funky Bunch. So we've got field team members here that some of you may recognize. Bill Krause has been on, he came over on the Mayflower.
Forever. He's been there forever.
Since 1995, he is an evergreen, and he's as excited about it now as he was in 1995. Candy out of Little Rock serves, we all serve the state, but she serves the Southwest region in various areas. Kim Hall, part of our subrecipient at ASU. Juliana Gonzalez, our operations manager. Amy, one of our newer hires at ASU. Brandon, part of our subrecipient at University of Arkansas. Joel, who you may recognize, he ran the Innovation Hub in Little Rock, among other things, and then Eddie Majesty here as well. So quickly, I'm going to fly through our services here, only so that when you hear in the state, hey, I've got this pain point, I want you to think, okay, Gamble and his team can probably help with that. I need to make a referral. I want you to be aware of that. Transformational leadership improvement. Most training around leadership development starts and stops in the classroom. That's great because that's where knowledge transfers happens, and it's important, Danny. But that's not where transformation happens. Transformation happens whenever you have multiple modalities, including classroom training, individual coaching, 360 feedback, so that we can give these leaders handles to be able to pick their leadership up and move it forward. This is something that I curated over about 6 or 8 years on the team. By the way, I've been on the team for 12 years. I call myself an old manufacturing puke. I've been in that ecosystem, in that space for 32 years, 20 of that working directly in industry with 3 different companies. And then the balance of that for 12 years on the manufacturing solutions team. Carmen, I love what you said so much. You said, and I'll say it a little bit differently, but I'll echo the sentiment. She says, I don't really feel like I've got a job. And the way I'll say it is, I came here 12 years ago and I haven't worked a day since then because I love what I do so much, which is work with manufacturers throughout the state. We work exclusively with manufacturers, exclusively in the state of Arkansas. And our sweet spot is 25 to 250. 25 to 250. There are a lot of companies in our state below 25. It's a little more of a challenge for us to serve them, although we as Bill Krause and the team says, we work with the willing. it's more difficult for us to serve them because from a federal program level, we are a cooperative program, meaning there's a little bit in it at the state level, there's a little bit in it from a client's perspective, and then the federal award as well. Those are the three main, the three legs of the stool. So we charge for services, we try to keep that reasonable, and we are required under our agreement to do that. So that's the team, TLI, lean manufacturing. So leadership development is a big part of what we do. When I joined the team years ago, I was telling Dan Curtis at the time, you know, I think that the community colleges and these different entities have this kind of button down. And what I heard going around the state, doing these discovery visits with manufacturers time, and I'm picking on you because you're close to me right here, you're in the power seat. But what I kept hearing over and over again was, hey, we promoted these leaders based on their technical ability and we haven't done a good job training them. I kept hearing that over on how to lead. They know how to make the products. We haven't done a good job of training them how to lead. So that's was the genesis of that. Lean manufacturing moves us from organizational excellence on the leadership development side over to operational excellence. Lean is ubiquitous at this point. It was a new catchy thing in the late 80s and early 90s. It moved from quality circles and TQM into lean. We copied off of Toyota, and now we've evolved into Toyota Kata. Toyota Kata, we actually use this on ourselves. We practice what we preach. We have Kata teams inside of our team going at any given time, helping us improve our own business processes and hit those metrics that we challenge ourselves to. 3 components of Kata. When you hear someone saying, hey, we don't have a formal methodology for how to improve, we just kind of try to do something for a while and it fizzles out. I want you to think about Gamble and the AMS team and think, you know what, there's a better way. This is the best thing. Chris, I'm going to pick on you because I can see your name tag here that I know of to just make continuous improvement how we do the business. So much of what I hear is we've done some Kaizen events and it was kind of death by Kaizen. There is a better way, and it's called Toyota Kata. Training within industry. This was actually the program that they consider to be the roots of lean, Renee. Whenever the men went off to fight the world in World War II, who came into the factories? Women. What did they use to train those women to bring them up to speed quickly, consistently, and reliably? They used a program called Training Within Industry. It has 2 components, and this is the one where we will teach trainers how to break down jobs into the important steps, key points, and reasons so that they can safely, reliably, and consistently deliver that training. It works hand in glove with Lean and Toyota Kata because we make the improvements and then we use TWI to prop up those improvements and keep them in place. Justin mentioned the workplace resilience assessment. This was my attempt to codify the employee experience. The 2 foundational elements are playing environment and culture, because those are the 2 things primarily that employees, team members are going to experience when they come into your business, and then those 5 other elements. We do this for free. So this is a value add, whether or not someone, wanted to engage. We also use this to frame up, hey, what are the other opportunities, that we could engage and serve, but we would do it as a standalone. They take the assessment online, and as many of the leaders, site leaders and direct reports who we can get to take it, the better. And then we come on site, usually a couple of us spend about 6 hours walking the process. We have 7 different elements with between 10 to 18 questions inside of those elements that we're looking at. We score, we compare that to the client's score, and then we prepare a report to provide to them. And this is a little bit of an eye chart, but we had all of this spread out on different slides, and for the sake of brevity today, I wanted to compress all this. So stuff going on in leadership development around team building, leadership development, and so on. Our assessments, I failed to mention that we have 3 assessments: the workforce assessment called workplace resilience, the supply chain assessment, which each of these functions can relate to this process I just described from the workplace resilience assessment. 7 to 8 elements with a number of questions, starting with an online pre-assessment that they take, and then we come on site. The 3rd one is the technology assessment. So we have leadership development, operational excellence, many things here. A lot of this are tools and lean that we offer. We also have 6 Sigma, quality systems, support, supply chain technology, and the like. So Carmen talked a lot about grants that are available. This is the grant that's available for not our services, but third-party services that enable the third party to transfer their technology into the company. For example, we have company over in Heber Springs that wanted to automate their filling station. Well, we were able to access a third party to come in and do that work. The company has $1,250 in earnest money in that, and then $3,750 of that comes from the grant. So the total benefit, the total project, each of those is $5,000. The company qualifies for 2 of those per calendar year, July 1 through June 30. 2 $5,000 VTAC grants. This is Bland Hurt, who is kind of a renaissance man. He is one of the owners now of, and has been for SMA, Southern Marketing Affiliates up in the North. Someone asked about a testimonial earlier on. SMA, I'll give them a testimonial. They have done better than maybe any other company since my 12 years of being on the team. That slide, Senator English, with all of those different things that we do, they've engaged in nearly every one of them, and they haven't just done it and let it wither. They are using that to drive their business. Bland in particular, and that company in general, has done a better job and as a testimonial of what you can do in your business if you embrace these things and follow them through. That's who we are. I think I beat 2 hours. I'm glad to answer questions.
What about your, I guess, census? How many companies are we reaching, every year on that?
Yeah, Danny, it's a great question. How many companies are we reaching? Danny, I'm going to give you the typical consultant answer. It depends. It depends upon what you mean by reach them. Now, if you're talking about discovery visits, like Justin talked about, we do our own. We do co-visits with the regional managers, and that can be 350 to 450 companies. If you're talking about, we've touched them in some substantive way, whether it be a webinar, an open enrollment, a lunch and learn, you're talking about 120 companies. You're talking about a deeper service agreement like we've done with SMA and some others. You're talking about probably 40 or 50 companies in a year. So it's a little bit of a funnel in that way. And with 9 team members, that keeps us pretty busy. But we always want more. So please get the word out.
Any parts of the state that really leverage you all more than others?
Wonderful question. We have good penetration in the central region of the state, the northeast region. For whatever reason, I'll just bring you guys into the tent here. We haven't penetrated as much in the Northwest, and that's a big time opportunity. Is there any manufacturing in the Northwest? Yeah. So we have 2 team members now. I started a subrecipient over there with the University of Arkansas. I didn't talk much about that, but we have 3 subrecipient agreements in the state where we take the federal award and then some portion of that we're allocating into those sub-awardees. Arkansas State University, University of Arkansas, and National Parks College. So we had 3, now we're down to 2, but we'll get back up to 3 team members in the Northwest, and we're seeing our penetration service levels go up in that region. Great questions. Challenge me, man. What else you got?
Well, I've got one more. Let others have it.
Just to be clear, so OSD does fund this training that he does, and we utilize the same rules that we do for our grants. And I will shout out SMA. SMA have been faithful in utilizing Keith, and as you can tell by Keith, he'd be the person I would want training my folks. I feel like they've been doing it for years.
They have. We've engaged with them since 2018. I did their strategic plan in 2018, and they have met quarterly, faithfully since then to update that plan. It's very impressive.
That's a good point when you mentioned that this is a service that we charge. We're kind of odd duck here that we charge for this service. It's the reason being is that while we do it certainly at probably less than market rate compared to out third party consultants, it's important that the company has skin in the game. They tend to be engaged. If it's a free service, it's free. They may not be as involved as they should. They have thousands of dollars invested in this. They tend to be more engaged. It's a little bit different than what a lot of services we do on the regional manager side. So we do that as part of our service to the state. It's part of the model for the MEP is that they charge for service. That's tends to get more engagement. I think they feel the companies are probably at a much higher level. So
It's a wonderful point, Justin. If you go back to the guidance document that started the MEP in 1988, they talked about it in that era, the awareness that something for nothing yields nothing. So it was in the construct from the get-go. And anecdotally, for the last 12 years, what I have found over and over again is we as manufacturers, we as employers in the state, value something. I would say only value something, but primarily we value something if we've got some skin in the game. We're paying for it. Other questions?
I would just say, oh, I'm sorry, Secretary.
Oh, go ahead.
Please.
Well, I was gonna, really, wasn't a question, but hopefully you're seeing, board members are seeing, some transformation happening because the last few years, internal as well as external uncertainty, comments, questions, criticisms. Stephanie was an OSD. I'll say silo sometimes. That's a derogatory term, but doing very good work as OSD. Justin, Keith, for an AEDC, doing a lot of work together with OSD, but sometimes we're missing things. Carmen doing great work. And what we're through a transformation, we're now all together and all of the workforce. Justin, of all of the activity that you guys do, how much is workforce related and culture related about the workforce internally? Not just training, but
Probably 75%.
75%.
That's a good number.
So we really, and Keith, a lot of yours is human development, workforce, or a lot of it's manufacturing, process improvement. But we really feel like having these functions together with the workforce develop, all within workforce development, there was some synergies. We use that term too much, but and when from an economic development prospect perspective, other states have reduced the complexity for, you know, an outside company. Just you said it, you know, there's so much. Where do I go as a company? Where do I go to get my training, to get my economic development support, not economic development, but workforce development support. And some states have got a branded effort, whether it's Georgia Quick Start or Louisiana Fast Start or Alabama's got one, yeah. I think Cody today is talking to ASU, Todd Shields, to really begin thinking about and talking about our version of Georgia Quick Start. And we've got all pieces now under an umbrella, and where we can start talking about our one point of contact. We want ASU to be part of this. We want U of A to be part of this. Where their campuses are, not recreating the wheel, but having an overall branded effort when Clint or Justin or Keith or myself or the governor is talking to a company, and we're competing against Georgia or Alabama or Louisiana. This is our program. It's clean, it's branded, it's not complex, it's one point of contact where you can get grants, direct employer grants, where you can get specified technical training support, where you can get hand-holding with Justin's team when they have specific training requirements for an economic development prospect, which you were talking about yesterday. This is the program, this is the umbrella program that we want to develop and hook in our respective community colleges, 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges, make it all a seamless one point of contact whatever the brand's gonna be. But this is where we're headed, this is what we've gotta do. And ultimately, you know, our secondary centers in the K through 12 system are also part of this effort as well. So stay tuned for more, but I think Cody will, U of A is very supportive of it. Chris Thomason had discussions with Chris, Shane Broadway, but I think Cody will have a conversation. We'll have a productive conversation with Chancellor Shields. But this will really, I think, help us in our communications, in our branding, in our marketing, to really be on a similar playing field. We'll always have more work to do, and we do have more work to do. You know, bringing MWTI, really our only tech school. There's efforts to improve MWTI work, but that will be part of the umbrella, workforce development umbrella. So anyway,
I want to say
you guys done a
yesterday,
great job.
yesterday, Justin, Cody and I had the chance to meet with a prospect who's thinking about coming to Arkansas. And it was really neat, because it's the first time we've kind of done that since the transformation. And one of the comments from one of the people on the ground there, he said, I wish I had this kind of workforce in my state. I wish my children had access to that. So I think, you know, having us all be together and not be working in the silos. I got to see it kind of firsthand yesterday where we're working hand in hand with ADC and Justin's team, and Cody brings all workforce connections. So we're beginning to see the fruits of your labor, Secretary.
I will tell you that I had a conversation last week with a friend who asked me, how are you enjoying the transition from economic development to workforce? It's like, it's the same thing.
Yeah, that's right.
It's the same thing.
That's right.
They were always connected. We were just taking advantage, you know, we're accentuating those connections now. They've always been there. There's no difference between economic. You can't have one without the other.
That's right.
Vice versa. So it's I think it's really fantastic to do. It's already paid business. Already feel like I'm more engaged in economic development than I was as a part of economic development in some ways, which is an interesting transition. So.
Danny, really quickly, while I held on to the speaking conch, I would be remiss if I did not brief mention the Arkansas Manufacturing Showcase. We had the 2025 on October 1st and 2nd. We had 85 exhibitors there representing manufacturing in that ecosystem, 3 tracks around workforce, supply chain, and technology. Over the course of a couple of days, we had 450 people there. Our vision for the one coming up next year is 600 or more attendees, 135 exhibitors. We got some really exciting things planned in some new tracks. So please go ahead and mark your calendars for that now.
Thank you, Keith. Yeah, I'll just briefly add to what the secretary said. You kind of stole my thunder but to say thank you, because this didn't accidentally happen. It's very intentional, and it's I've seen these pieces and parts, as I know Senator English has too for many years, but to see it all come together, I think for a better delivery to our employers and to give our citizens opportunities to win. And just hats off. Thank you. Stay the course. We want to support you all. We definitely everything you do. Thanks for intentionally putting together this agenda that it just really makes it all fit into view and builds a greater appreciation. So thank you all for what you're doing. The comments I get across is
Well, Stephanie told me I had 10 minutes. So I can get my name. Ross Watt, Director of Division of Career and Technical Education at the Department of Education. Stephanie and I had some conversation about this numerous times, and then I know after the last meeting, there was just conversation. It always goes around the funding for, you know, I think our secondary career centers and what that looks like. And so I had said to Stephanie, I said, I think we just need to have a little bit of conversation around how things are changing in the world of education. I know that Secretary Leva, I think it might have been for a lot of y'all, your first board meeting, he gave a little brief introduction to Learns, and then was like, and then we're gonna have this thing called Access. And now those are both passed and in law and moving along, and we're deep into implementation. And so like if you read Democrat Gazette this weekend, there were a full 2 pages around school letter grades and accountability. That comes right into this. There's a lot of good to it. So I'm going to run through just some high level points. Some of these slides have a lot of detail. And Tina and Moore and I have nightmares about them because this is what we have spent, I feel like years, but it's been like months implementing with schools. And we're not worried about the details with you all. But I want you to understand what our state has built. When we look at education reform, our goal right here is this statement. We want success-ready graduates, and we want our graduates ready. For the next piece, if Secretary Lieber was here, he would say, enlistment, enrollment, employment, the 3 E's. And that's really what we're focused on, and ensuring that every student who graduates from Arkansas high school is ready for one or not all 3 of those in some roundabout way. So as we look at that, we have this lovely statement here we like to talk about, but the importance of how Learns and Access, how they are connected to each other, that we're ensuring our students are success ready, but ultimately are meeting our workforce needs. And so obviously we look at this board, we look at the Department of Commerce, with the Department of Ed and our goals, and that's what we're aiming for. And then of course that we want, every Arkansan to be on some pathway towards prosperity as we look at this holistically. And that has really become our work and our charge around what we do. When we look at this, so when we look at a success-ready graduate, so in my world, we spend a lot of time in that K-12 sector. We extend into the post-secondary, but really be intentional about what does that look like. And so for a lot of our schools, what the way they've always looked at students post-graduation being ready has been a 9-12 window. So there's magically 9th grade, all of a sudden we focus on what are you doing post-graduation? And we're really trying to change that conversation as well and build it really through a 6-12 umbrella, but then eventually the whole time. I have people say all the time, well, you can't have a conversation with a first grader about work. You absolutely can. Now, something, what do you want to be when you grow up? I mean, you can say that too, but that's not real intentional. But us having those conversations on a regular piece with it about what are your interests, what are you good at, and how do we build and build from there. But being very intentional, grades 6 through 12, that every single student in our schools is engaging. And so in that 6-8 umbrella, we talk about early career experiences. So now every single school in the state of Arkansas has to give every student 4 experiences a year, grade 6, grade 7, grade 8. That's around an early career experience. So what does that mean? Well, we're letting that local district decide, but they're engaging with their local employers and letting students be exposed to what work looks like in their region. What does that mean? Through field trips to career fairs to different interactions in their classrooms, whatever it may be, but every single student is getting that. And that's where we saw a lot of schools were doing it, but they were doing it with pockets of students, not necessarily every student, and being very intentional there. We've had in law since 2017, what's called student success plans. If you've had a student graduate from a high school in the state of Arkansas since 2017, they've had to have a student success plan. It's funny, you go up and start talking to parents about that, they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. What's a student success plan? Never heard of it. And I'm like, well, the former high school principal means like, oh, okay, well, I don't know where you're going to school, but they're not knocking that out of the park. But this has become a compliance document. As a former high school principal up till 2021, like it was checking some boxes. We were checking off boxes with every kid that we graduated every year. And from a relatively large high school that I came from, like it was a big deal. But we weren't intentional. This should be a relationship between the school, the student, and their family on what are you doing when you leave our doors? You graduate from us, like what's the next step? And not just, oh, we checked off every little box and we mentioned that to you once and we gave you a piece of paper about that. But how are we getting them to their goal and helping them work to that goal post-graduation? So we've really changed a lot of the pieces on here. I think Mike's probably still on the Zoom, but so we know about launch. And so we have launch for students that we are in pilot right now. We have 135 districts in the state that are piloting launch with students. And then next school year, we'll move into every district in the state using that. That's where they do their student success plans. There's a part about interest, aptitudes, but then ultimately connecting them with our systems and then really being what are our next step goals and giving them an interface to have all these things that we are collecting to be a tool belt for those students post-graduation to be successful. And then giving students pathways while in high school. So while they're in high school, that they're on some sort of success-ready pathway that's preparing them for post-graduation. And really going back to that enlistment, enrollment, employment, where are we aligning and how are we building out opportunities for them? Now, any of us that have ever worked with a high schooler know they change their mind about every other day. So there's that ability of still being connected to that, but at the same time being very intentional and being focused on what we offer and what we have conversations with students about. Our goal also is to retain our talent. I use the example when I was where I live there, I was driving the community one day and there's this huge billboard and it is on very busy interstate in our state, promoting the student who got into Dartmouth, which I'm like, oh, that's impressive. That was probably hard, but I'm like, why are we celebrating that? Like, we're sending a kid up to the Northeast of some Ivy League school that's never come to Arkansas. Yeehaw, that was great. Buddy. Why aren't we celebrating XYZ kid that's going to stay right here in this community and be a part of our tax base and do that? So at the same time, we kind of have painted this picture within our school systems of what success looks like. That student getting into Dartmouth and going there is that's powerful. That's impressive. But ultimately, that billboard tells every single person driving by it, well, that's what my kid needs to be successful. Get on that billboard. They need to get into some really big school far away. Like, that is not, in my opinion, what we should be selling. And it aggravated me every time I saw it. And I talk about it a lot. So maybe they got I know they haven't put any more billboards up, so maybe they've heard me. But like with that is how are we investing in our own state and our own programs? And so from that, as we talk about success ready graduates, we go to our 3 E's that we talk a lot about and how we're building those pieces. But what became known as success ready pathways. Now this, I could do a 6-hour presentation on, I'm not going to wear you out. But our schools now have to have pathways. They're required by law. That's been around for a long time. They have to have 3. But with the implementation of LEARNs now, they have to have one that is considered high wage, high demand in our state. Okay, what we call an H2 pathway. And they must have a minimum of one of those, because the other thing we have seen is that we have schools offering programs and a lot of times they're not very intentional in what they do. So we have 236 school districts in the state of Arkansas, public school districts, 23 charters. We have 315 high schools in the state of Arkansas. Okay, it's a lot. And they all get to choose what they offer and not a lot of regulation to it. So us requiring them that at least one has to be high wage, high demand was a pretty heavy lift. They've done it at this point, but that's also being us aligning with the needs of Arkansas and Arkansas employers and Arkansas workforce needs. And so it's a stair step into it. So these are what meet our high wage, high demand. There's a whole method into that process. You're also going to notice the things up here that talk about advanced placement or Cambridge or International Baccalaureate. Those are programs that aren't necessarily career and technical, but they are programs in the state that, as this was embedded in some of the legislation was written, they were included in it. But these are going to be aligned by our career and technical education programs we offer across the state. So we have over 70 pathways in the state of Arkansas that a school could offer. 22 of them currently meet that high wage, high demand piece. So that was really giving our schools kind of this focus of, that's a great pathway you can offer, but there's not a lot of demand or it doesn't make a great wage in our state. And that your school can still offer it, you can still do it, but we're going to put our priority into these so that we're meeting workforce needs. We reevaluate this list every January just to revisit it. I mean, intentionally, obviously, with workforce data, we don't see a lot of major shifts, but it is something that we're reviewing annually, which I think stresses our schools out because they're like, well, it could change. Sure, yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. We obviously still need to have alignment. And so that I think is an important piece. I also think that's important as we talked about the tiered funding we have at secondary career centers. It's being really intentional with that too, to make sure there's alignment there as well with the programs we're offering at secondary career centers, that we see that alignment existing within what we consider here, because our schools are required by law to have 3. They can rely on their secondary career center for one of those. And a lot of our really small rural districts do, which is good because they're sending students there and those students are meeting that criteria. But all of this created what is called merit and distinction. And if you ask a superintendent or a principal in the state of Arkansas, a high school principal that is, what is merit and distinction, they'd be able to tell you. Those letter grades, if you saw them in the newspaper this weekend, for every high school campus, part of their letter grade was determined by merit distinction. So I'm really excited about this, and at the same time, it makes my head hurt because in our accountability system for public schools in our state, for my right at 20 years as an educator in the state of Arkansas, we've never talked about anything but academics. Okay, and academics in math, science, literacy, which is all important, but we've never talked about anything else being indicating whether school is successful or not. And as a 20-year almost CTE educator, it always kind of hurt my feelings. Like, we work real hard, we put a lot of heart and soul in this, and we see a lot of return from what our students do, but we don't evaluate it anyway. Merit distinction is where we're pulling in the impact of career technical education into our school accountability. That's great. It's also, we get a lot of questions, and it's a lot of really rethinking some things the way we've always done things. So students can earn merit or distinction when they graduate. What this is saying is they've completed a success-ready pathway, and they have a demonstration of readiness. They have earned credential, education attainment, some piece that shows they have a readiness factor to them, which means what we view it as is to an employer in their resume and their tool belt, it's something they have that they can show they have a skill of some form or fashion. This gets super complicated and we're not going to go through it all, but this is where that lives. And so when we look at merit distinction, there are different levels. Merit's the first level. Then distinctions at a little bit higher level, but both of them require them to complete a pathway, which means at least 3 courses. And then the second part is they have this demonstration of readiness that they're able to match. So when they get to the end of that, this comes into school letter grades, which if you want a fun lesson, here's how you calculate a high school letter grade in the state of Arkansas. We look at how well they perform academically. We look at growth of students. We look at growth of the lowest 25% of students. And then we look at the fourth thing, which is a success rate graduate. So that's 2 pieces. Do they graduate in 4 years on time? And then were they a merit or distinction graduate? And so our schools get points for that. And so, you know, much about our schools and letter grades to a superintendent, to a building principal, it's really important. Okay. It tells a lot about how they're doing. It tells about their school, about their staff, but also it gets printed in the paper on a regular basis. I know as most people talk about LEARNs, the piece they hear in LEARNs, I feel like it's always in the media, is about education freedom counts, parental choice. Yeah, that's a big piece of it. But that letter R in LEARNs is all about readiness and ensuring our graduates are ready. So this has been a big change for our schools, and we're kind of in year 2 of it. They just got their first letter grade in it. We always say the class of 2028, which is the current sophomores, are going to be our first graduating class that will have the full impact of this. But we are already seeing some pretty quick changes in that. So then we come to access, and the lovely acronym here, and hallelujah, Ken Ward's not here because he would spend a 2-hour dissertation about this one. But there's a lot in here that all applies to this, but acceleration becomes our other little piece. And providing these opportunities for students to build skills, but acceleration is another really big piece we're hitting on. And that's where I always go. Our secondary career centers are meeting the big mark for us. So we have students enrolled heavily. They complete up pathways, and then they are continuing that piece with that secondary career center. And so with that acceleration opportunities, we're also going to see a pretty significant increase. So this right here is the fall of 2025. So what we're living right now, what our enrollment numbers look like. So in K-12 CT enrollment, which is pretty much 5th grade through 12th grade, we have courses that start as early as 5th grade, all the way through 12th grade. We're sitting at right at 177 rears in a seat. Okay, now that could be a duplicate count. We have some kids who take multiple courses, but we have 177 rears, almost 178,000 students in some form of career and technical education course right now in the state K-12. Not like that. Then on top of that, we have almost 16,000 students who are in some sort of concurrent enrollment with career and technical education. Okay, and from that number there, 9,872 students are at a secondary career center. Okay, so pretty significant enrollment. And so then you go, well, what does it look like in the past? This chart did not turn out exactly how I envisioned it, but it's here. This number kind of skewed the rest. We have seen a 10,000 increase in just number of bottoms and seats in the K-12 enrollment from last school year to this school year. 10,000 rears in a seat in 1 year went up. Okay, we don't see that typically. That is because schools are seeing those letter grades and seeing how it's attached to accountability. They're like, we need more kids in pathways. What are you doing? We've also, and here for Secretary Leba, you hear him talk about, we have a lot of students who do not have full schedules. Over 40% of our seniors did not have a full schedule last year. Okay, meaning that they were getting to leave school super early because they have all their graduation requirements in. See you later. We don't need you. He's pushing hard on why is it the case, and that's not success in any form or fashion. And so we also see more and more of that coming in. Our concurrent enrollment has gone up almost 4,000 as well. We're just a little below it, right at 4,000. In that, which is another big piece of being really intentional there. And then our center number, only reason it looks any different or down is because of some of the changes that we have made to be able to meet that budget piece and talking about some of the center enrollments, specifically programming wise around concurrent or not. But that's been a steady increase, that number has. And so the little discrepancy looks excited, but that's here, I would say it's not going to be a true picture moving forward because across the board, we're seeing steady increases. And our schools are catching on more and more. Right before I got here, I was on a Zoom. It was with school administrators. It's more and more questions about building out their programs. We constantly get questions about centers. I was in a district on Friday, and they were like, we were told the other day that we have almost 40 kids on a waiting list to get in that secondary career center. How can we get more seats there? And of course, part of my conversation too was, well, they only have enough faculty to go around to teach the courses as well. Those are always worth conversations, but you and the district need to have that relationship with that post-secondary partner. So we know those numbers are going to continue to increase, especially as we look at school accountability, because schools are going to, this was their first letter grade, they got this fall with that. They will continue to figure out the system and how it works and play the game, but be able to determine how they can improve their letter grade by giving their students more opportunities. So we know that we're going to continue to see increased enrollment. I know Stephanie mentioned earlier, from the public school fund that comes out of my budget for secondary career centers is a little over $23 million that we've put for secondary career centers. So with that $23 million, that's where we're serving the 9,000. That's the fall enrollment. Obviously, there'll be a spring enrollment as well. That's the dollar amount that's being served there. And so I think that this board is where we have to be really intentional with the dollars that are there. How are we meeting those needs? And I think it's some time for a review of what that's going to have to look like budget wise, but also being able to determine where the return is coming from that. Because we'll continue to see people wanting students to be at secondary career centers because it's another opportunity. But at the same time, we grow across the board and we're still funding these 171,000 that are happening on our high school campuses as well. And so there's kind of that intentionality as we look at this moving forward. And so felt like you just needed to know about how that's fitting into school accountability, what merit distinction looks like, and then kind of this reform. We hear a lot, man, I wish schools still taught that or taught that. Those things have never gone away. Some schools might have chosen to no longer offer them, but we've still been teaching them. It's always been kind of what did schools put priority on, or what were they getting the most impact for? And so when we look at school letter grades, they weren't getting anything for that. So they would still maybe have the programs, but it wasn't something that they were incentivized with. And now our administrators are being incentivized and they're being intentional with it. So we're seeing some very dramatic kind of swings of the pendulum to bring those programs back, and they want them immediately and fast and want huge enrollment and being intentional with it, but also being aware of the dollars that exist there. So that was more just informational for you. And then if you want any sort of breakdowns, I always go, Stephanie's team has a great job with breakdowns of enrollment by centers, but we also can give it to you across the board districts, what those look like as we continue to look at what enrollment continues to grow within kind of career and technical education across the board. So take questions.
I'll just say the reason that it's down on the centers, because you'll recall that last year this board did vote to eliminate tier 3 programming, which is why the enrollment's down there. And the second thing, I just made a note to myself that in the coming weeks, we will convene a committee to talk about performance-based funding, which will is going to mean new legislation. But I think it's at least worth the conversation for us to begin having these conversations, because you're talking about $23 million for 10,000 students. We want to make sure that that is quality, that they're getting a value add to that kind of investment on these programs. So I do think performance-based is the way to go. So I made myself a date when I'll get with you, Ross and Tina.
I have one thing, Ross.
Could
Sorry.
have had Tina up here with me. That was nice too.
Could you go back to the distinction slide? Just an added piece that also ties in with higher ed. In Access, there was language that talked about in our scholarships, a student who earns a diploma of distinction is eligible for the governor's scholarship, which if they get a technical certificate, that's one of the ways to do that. So students going to secondary career centers often earn technical certificates. Those could be as low as around 22 credit hours up to 45. But many of our students, y'all probably could pull those numbers, but we know that's going to increase now because of this anyway. They're going to be much more intentional. But those students are eligible for $5,000 a year. And that stacks with the academic challenge, which starts out at $1,000 a year and then goes on up each year. So that is a huge opportunity for students to get an amazing scholarship, and it's not reliant on an ACT score or even GPA. So pretty big deal, students.
And really hats off to higher ed, because if you go back one slide, if you go back to the diploma of merit, if you look there, they have put the Arkansas Certified Pre-Apprenticeship. So if a student gets this pre-apprenticeship, which is certified through our office, they're going to be a merit diploma. And we are currently funding both this is for you, Jeff, ABC and ACEF, our apprenticeship providers. We actually funded them to help promote these pre-apprenticeships in our centers and all around districts. So we have the most pre-apprentices we've ever had, and it's based on that. And then if you go to the distinction, if you have some youth apprentice, that is someone who's basically, they're getting their RTI and they're working part-time. They are a registered apprentice. We just denote that they're a youth because they're not getting their 2,000 on-the-job training hours. So that's the same as someone who got an associate's degree. And that is such, I can't say enough about higher ed, Ken Warden, Secretary Leva, and you, Ross, for making that distinction. It's not just the kid who goes to Dartmouth, it's also the kid who is an apprentice electrician or plumber.
We've
So-
definitely repainted the picture of what
Yes.
success means. Because again, it's been so heavily tied for quite some time to academic, which, I mean, there's still a return there. But really, how are we meeting the need? How are we filling our workforce needs in our community? And some have definitely caught it and are running with it. Some of them are still trying to figure it out. We have a lot of regular conversations. The scholarship piece has been huge as well. I laughed right before I came here. Actually, one of the questions literally asked me on a Zoom was, so that kid who gets that TC in automotive out at that XYZ center is going to get the same scholarship that my valedictorian is getting because they've taken every AP course. I said, yeah, because they actually have some real college education, and your AP scholar doesn't have any yet. And so it's still them wrapping their minds around, pieces that every student's different, every student has a different pathway, but being very intentional with it. So I think we will definitely see progress from this. Hopefully it'll also help fill some of our workforce needs we see across the state, or also us do a better job of recruiting businesses because we're better able to tell them what our graduates are leaving high school with, and having some data with that in the next few years. But at the same time, also building it, but we're going to feel some pains in it as well, because those numbers are going to increase, and we know those numbers, the dollars that are there are probably going to stay pretty consistent. And so how we have to be creative and adapting funding is probably going to be inevitable.
One more fun fact, go back to merit as well. And it could be on either of these slides, but on merit where it says 12 or more post-secondary credits, that's another reason when Stephanie mentioned how important it is that these students have concurrent credit at the secondary career centers, is that is one of the ways they can get the merit, which is another scholarship that's on there. But the fun fact is now concurrent credit is weighted just like AP has always been weighted. So that is a game changer. When you mentioned valedictorian, made me think of that. Our valedictorian now may be the student who went to the secondary career center and had concurrent credit, and all that is weighted, not just the student who was taking AP courses. So it's a new world.
Yeah, we've seen some of our largest districts in the state also change some of their graduation requirements. Instead of just having a valedictorian, salutatorian, or top graduates, changing some of their language as well to align with this, because they know that there's value in all of it. And so being intentional with that. Good, Mark. Other questions?
I got one question.
Yes, sir.
Is Is this all public schools or where does the private schools? fit
So,
into this?
I mean, in private school side, we don't have, I guess you would say, the authority piece within it. They're aware of it and they can do merit distinction as they choose, but there's no requirement of them. Where obviously our public schools and charter schools are required because they fall under that requirement piece with the standards for accreditation that our K-12 schools have in the state.
What if they're taking state money through the Lawrence Act?
So, yeah, I mean, it still doesn't fall back into our accountability metric in regards to that. They still are accountable for assessment, but they're not accountable for what we call accreditation for our K-12 schools. But I will say we've seen a pretty big uptick, and I know Stephanie could speak of this, just to centers or to our schools where we have a lot of students, probably more with homeschoolers than any other, that you will see that want to be a part of those pathways. And we have those systems that have been built for years, and the opportunity for students to come be a part of a secondary career center or be at a high school with their CTE program or other programming. And then actually we've seen some privates. We've had some privates for some time that have already participated with some of our secondary career centers. But I would say we've even seen a little bit of uptick there that choose they want, if there's a spot available, to be able to do that as well.
Thank you.
Questions, comments?
And if y'all ever have questions about it and you're trying to understand it, I didn't have it up there at some point. There's my phone number and email address. Feel free. It's a lot. It can get very confusing very quickly, but I feel like it's just good information as we begin to discuss the fun of money.
Very, very good presentation, Ross. Thank you. You legitimately did have 2 hours worth.
And I'm a talker anyway, so when you said 10 minutes, I was like,
You presented very, very well. So, and made it understandable. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your work every day. I'm gonna go ahead, before we adjourn, give Stephanie an opportunity to share any updates. I know we also want to talk about the meeting cadence as well, but.
Yeah, I would just say that we still await a large DOL, Department of Labor announcement. Hopefully that will be coming in the next couple of weeks. The government shutdown put us back, and as soon as I have information on that, I will disseminate that information to you. And if there are opportunities for pictures in the governor's office, I don't know that we're going to do that, but if they do, this board's a big part of us, and so I'll make you aware of that. And the other thing is, I did speak to Deanie about, in the past, this board has met quarterly. When we had quarterly meetings, I would say sometimes they were 3.5 hours. It's kind of up to you guys. If you want to keep it to a 10 to 12, and I'm a stickler for time. I realize your time's valuable. I don't want to have a 3 or 4 hour meeting because it could go over 2 hours if we did quarterly. So we can still maintain the bi-monthly, I guess every other month, or we could move to quarterly, and I would just open up the floor to discuss what your preference is on that.
I like where we are right now.
Do you
That's
think?
good. I like where we're at there.
Okay. Carry on. So that means our next board meeting will be on February the 10th.
Any other business or discussion on our ex officio members? Any comments or we should know?
A lot of good information today. A lot of good.
Well, Carmen brought.
Hey.
Where's the heart, sir? Well, unless there are any other comments or questions, like to entertain motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Right, a motion and a second, and then all in favor.
Aye.
All right, and hope everyone has a wonderful, safe, Merry Christmas.
Lunch is across the hall. Feel free to go down to the Razorback room, grab lunch, bring it back here. And we can continue.
Recording stopped.
It's a lot.